So our first article today will be presented by PK Kannan and Xian from the University of Maryland. Their research examines whether and how firms using a freemium strategy can convert these free users into paying customers. Thank you for joining us, PK and Xian.
Thanks, Chris.
Hi, this is Xian.
All right, folks. Today we're going to be looking at how do you sell the premium in the freemium model. So what is exactly the freemium model? Freemium model is one where a firm provides a free version of their offering to acquire a large number of free users and then convert them to buyers of premium paid version of the offering. Now, this has become very popular these days. There are a number of nascent and successful examples of freemium model in the digital product and service categories. So, for example, in the content provider space, you have firms such as Spotify, Pandora, the New York Times, which has a paywall, and more recently, YouTube also has a freemium model. And in the social media, utilities, and games space, we have Dropbox, which is very well known, LinkedIn, Skype, and also the once popular Candy Crush game. And then finally, we have a huge space of software as service. You have companies such as Hootsuite, which is a social media management platform. You have Trello, a web-based project management software, and FreshBooks, an accounting software package. And what these companies do is they give you specifically a version to download for free. And then if you want to add in more users or beyond a particular limit, you have to get the premium version. Now, the marketing problem in the freemium version is, well, how do you make it successful? And success really depends on the percentage of free users upgrading to the paid premium version. And this percentage really varies quite a bit. It could be less than 1% to more than 4%, with an average of anywhere to 2%. Now, whether a firm is actually successful or not really depends on these conversion rates and their cost structures, but managers always try to look for ways in which they can increase the percentage of premium customers, and some of the ways that they try to do that is to experiment with the price of the premium version, and sometimes they carefully analyze which features to provide for free and what additional features to include in the premium version. Now, this has been a very active area of research in marketing for some time. Now, the research question that we have in this particular paper is, can we extend the premium product line to impact and move customers from free to the premium line, especially the existing premium version? So what do I mean by that? So let's take the popular Dropbox. Dropbox, when they came in 2008, they had the Dropbox Basic, which was given for free. And then they had a Dropbox Pro, where you had to pay about $10 a month. And you get 1 terabyte of space. And, you have this free option and the premium option. And the idea was to acquire people through viral means, get people to have great word of mouth about this product, and they were very successful with this. And then they moved, a few of them to this premium version. Now, it was not till 2013 that they introduced the Dropbox for Business. And the Dropbox for Business, of course, is targeted at the business segment, and it runs at $15 per user per month. But the idea here was they were targeting a different segment with a much, feature-rich kind of a product, a premium product. And so the question here is, of course, you will expect people to buy Dropbox Business if they are in the business segment and they have business users. But my question here is, can we say something about the enrollment for Dropbox Pro given the introduction of Dropbox Business? Or Dropbox would also introduce another version, let's say a Dropbox Pro 2, which could give you 2 terabytes of space, maybe at $17 a month or something. And if they introduce that, could they have more people moving from free to any of these premium lines? Now, what we want to do in this research is also provide some recommendations for people and for managers, especially to see how to design these products and where to price it. So what is the context of this particular research that we did? We actually focus on National Academies Press, which is an online content provider associated with the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. Now, National Academy Press has been selling books online since 1996, prior to even Amazon and Google, and they have been using this freemium model to sell its print book at a price while giving away free PDF versions. Now, they have been doing this for the past 4 years or so. So about 2 in 100 customers buy the paid paperback version, while the rest 98 just download the free PDF version. So you see the free version, which is the download for free, free PDF, and then the paid version is the paperback. Now, they also have features on the website where they can go and leaf through the PDF, try to get an idea of what is in there, and so they can do a lot of searching and checking around for content, and then decide to buy either stick with the free or go and buy the paperback. Now, we conducted the field experiment at NAP's website from January 2016 to August 2016, and we used a sample of 2051 book titles, about 2,051 book titles. And I'm going to explain to you what exactly we did. So what we actually did here was extend the product line. So how did we do it? We had a hardcover condition where we introduced a hardcover version of the same content at a much higher price. So what you see here is the hardcover price is $214, whereas the paperback is around $54 or so. And then you have the download for free PDF as before. And then we had another condition where you have a ebook condition, and in the ebook condition, what you say there is that you can either download the free PDF, buy the paperback, or you have an option to buy an ebook at a price which is much lower than the paperback price. Now, in this whole experiment, we also varied the price of new versions in the experiment. Okay. Now, what did we find? We added a hardcover version, and when we added a hardcover version, what we found was that sales of the paperback actually increased by 9%. It was interesting to see that hardcover itself didn't sell much. We had only 6 copies of hardcover books sold, but the paperback sales went up by 9%, and we also did our analysis, and we found that this actually came from people who would have otherwise stuck with a free PDF. Now, what is this effect called? This effect is popularly known as compromise effect, and many of us know that when we go to an appliance store or a Best Buy and look for TV, the salespeople usually show us a very low-end product and then a very high-end product, and then try to sell the middle, the compromise product. And so this is exactly what we are finding here, that when you add actually a hardcover at a very high price, it ends up, positively impacting the paperback sales. Now, what happened when we introduced the ebook version? Now, when we introduced the ebook version at a price which was on the lower end, so here you see in the figure that the ebook price was somewhere close to zero and not very close to the paperback price. But when we did that, there was no change in the sales for paperback. But when we actually moved the ebook price closer to the paperback price, something interesting happened. We had actually a tremendous improvement in the sales of the paperback. It's about 21%, which is not insignificant. Now, what is this due to? I mean, why is this that is happening? And of course, in literature, it's called attraction effect, right? So, what is attraction effect? I just want to give you an example. When you go to movies and you buy popcorn, And let's say you have two options there, a smaller can of popcorn for $4.50 and a larger for $7. And of course, people may have preferences as to which one they're going to buy. But typically what happens is there is an additional option that is provided, which is at $6.75, which is close to $7, but has much less popcorn in it. And what it really does is, if you were to look at the preferences for $4.50 and $7 before introduction of this particular option, some people would have chosen $7. But when you introduce this middle option at $6.75, more people choose the $7 option. So this is called the attraction effect, and this is precisely what is going on in our case. That is, when you introduce the ebook at a price closer to the paperback, people are saying, well, if I'm going to pay $25 for an ebook and the paperback is only $30, I might as well buy a paperback. I'm not saying everybody does this, but we have a significant number of people who actually get attracted to the paperback option, right? And so what is exactly our takeaway from this? What we find is extending product line of the premium offering can actually help move customers from free to premium. And in the software as service context, a versioning strategy really helps. So what happens here? The effect on demand for existing premium can be quite significant. It was 9% in the hardcover case and 21% in the ebook case. Now, if you were to look at the impact on the premium, the existing premium, it was actually stronger for sales of titles which were highly popular and or lower in price. So that's what an effect that we saw in the experiment. And we also saw in the case of ebook that your newly introduced premium offering can actually be very successful too. This is in addition to getting attraction effect, people also choose the ebook option. So what should managers do if they want to design a new premium version? How should it be priced? So the takeaway from our research is that if the version is to be introduced at the lower end of the price, then you could have a lower end of the price, and this design could be meeting different usages and tastes or appealing to different segments. But if you want the attraction effect to kick in, we would suggest that you should price it closer to the existing premium. Now, if the version to be introduced is at a higher end, then set the quality and price quite high so that the compromise effect can set in, right? So this is basically what we have at this particular point. And if you have any questions, we'll be very happy to answer them.
Thank you, PK. So again, we have time for questions now. So if you'd like to ask a question, you can type your question in the audio box that under the question and answer tab, and then we'll all be able to see that. So let's go ahead and start in with a few questions then. So one of the questions that I had personally was your experiment looks at, focuses on products like books and ebooks where we don't actually see, at least I'm not aware of, the use of these kinds of freemium models. So how generalizable do you think your results will be for, other sorts of areas like, for example, services as software, because you mentioned that. Do you have any other, I know you don't have any other evidence, but do you have any other sense that your results will translate into these other domains?
Chris, that's a great question. It is right that we have focused in a category which is in books. But if you look at this particular category, the category, has some features which are pretty much like service. Why I say this is the books that NAP sells are basically, reference books. These are not books that you use for one time and, check it away. But these are some things that you, stack it in your bookshelf or, keep it for reference for later. And so they are reused all the time. And that's why the freemium model works in this case, even though they give a free PDF. People still buy the printed book because these are reference material. They will go back and use it. So we essentially see this characteristic of this particular application to really transfer to any other application like a service, software as a service, where people reuse the software all the time for different things. And then if they want more functionality, and so they may actually buy the premium version. And so I think that it is easily generalized to a lot of different settings where freemium is made available. And so I think, of course, to the extent, we have different features in these free versus premium, the level of sales increase that you see of 9% and 21% will be, determined in the context of that particular case. But we think that this compromise and attraction effect have been, studied in lab settings, and they have also been shown in product line setting. And what we show here is that even though it works in the product line case, this is also very successful for moving people from free to paid versions.
Interesting. So here's a question from EA. He asks, or she asks, it's more of a clarification question. Could you explain again what you mean when you were talking about pricing the premium models? He mentioned that I think you said that pricing them lower is most effective. But again, I think that depends on the conditions. So maybe you could just repeat this part of the presentation, just for clarification here.
Okay, so what we essentially said here was that, the option to introduce, another version is entirely up to, the firm. And, it depends on which segment you have in mind, what kind of features you want to put in. Now, if the costs dictate that the features that you're giving and the premium that you're introducing is going to be less than what the existing premium that you have, that is when we say that is the lower end of the price. That is, you're trying to think of prices lower than your existing premium. And there we suggest that if you're going to be thinking about an option in this range, keep the price closer to the print. Now, if you are, on the other hand, introducing a very high-end version, you want to make sure that the quality is really high and the price is also quite high.
Great. So here's another question. It seems like, and you even mentioned at some point during the talk that the cost structure. So it seems like there could be significant costs involved in introducing these new premium options or versions. Did you examine this at all in your study?
Yeah. Again, a very good point.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say in this case is, of course, when NAP introduced the option of hardcover, the hardcover cost is fairly high. And in fact, they really didn't want to sell the hardcover. So they wanted to use the hardcover as a decoy option, make people buy the paperback, but they really didn't want to sell the hardcover because the expenses are going to be very high. It really depends. If you're, we haven't done any ROIs on this to see, what will happen if I were to put in money to introduce a new version and if it doesn't sell well. So obviously, before you go on to introducing some certain versions, you really have to find out what is the ROI of introducing this new version. And of course, experiments like this can provide you with some guidance on, how much money you're going to make with the existing premium and how much you can make with the new premium that you're introducing. And then you got to do a ROI study before you can introduce a version.
Great. Well, here's a question from Mayor. He's asked. He says great research, and he says your experiments consider a one-time purchase scenario. Do you think your results would apply when the pricing model is subscription-based?
Yeah, that's a good point. And certainly, if you were to think about, this is a one-time purchase, but like I said, it is a repeated use, right? And subscription model is where you have a repeated use. So certainly, I think that these pricing options could translate for subscription because people are making similar kind of judgments when they are comparing options, all right, whether it's a subscription or a product option. And so certainly this should actually translate to a subscription base because when people make a decision of buying a subscription, it is a question of, comparing similar options.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, Radula has a question here. She says, what if the customers of the company or, participating in this particular market do not have the knowledge and experience to evaluate the premium version of the product before it's used?
That is actually a very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is actually a good question. Now, typically, especially in the case of subscription and services, you really have to provide a lot more cues. Maybe trying to give some real good description of what the premium really entails, what are the advantages, and so on. Once they start using the free version, I think it helps them to understand what the premium is worth to them. And in the same way, I think if you're introducing a new premium version, you should be able to differentiate from the existing premium version and then say how this is going to be useful for consumers. Now, there are no easy ways of indicating how valuable it is in the service, because service tends to be more experiential based. Maybe free trial could be one way to do that, and those are options that you can consider on top of what we are doing here.
So there's two questions from Yashar, and I think he's wondering, first, how common these kinds of practices are among managers in terms of understanding the types of effects that you've uncovered. And then he also mentions the use of games in the gaming context, how the freemium model is used, and whether they would benefit from your insights.
That's a good question. So let me take the first one. Compromise effect and attraction effect are basically things that have been studied in the product line case. And in many of the managerial literature, you will find that people always ask these questions to, what if I introduce a product line and how is it going to cannibalize my existing product and so on. And there is also a lot of literature focused in how managers make decisions in this area. And then in Journal of Marketing, there are a number of articles that address these issues. So I think it's not unknown to managers with respect to how product lines can help. But what is interesting, like we talked about in the discussion, is that it is quite surprising that it really works in the freemium case, because what research has shown is the free option has a lot of strength. So if you were to compare a free versus, let's say you're giving away something for free and you're charging $2 for something versus $4 for something, the difference between $4 and $2 is not the difference between $2 and $0, because $0 has a lot more preference. And what we are finding is, even with the zero price effect, these ideas of compromise effect and attraction effect still seem to work. And that is something that managers can try in the freemium context. Now, with respect to the second question that you had on mobile, that's an interesting one. In mobile games, the freemium, you have a free game that you work with, and then you have in-app purchases, which that actually acts like a premium in the sense that you have to pay money as you are playing for different features and so on and so forth. And this one, we really can't take it and directly apply it to the in-app purchase case. But if you have a mobile game where you have a free version and you have a premium version where you have to subscribe and pay for it, then whatever we talk about in the research can be applied to that case.
Interesting. So this is a question I had when you were sharing the results, which is that in the experiment you talked about these two new formats, the hardcover and the ebook. And I wondered about whether it was possible that the effects you observed were possibly due to market expansion as opposed to the compromise and attraction effect. In other words, how do we really know that customers were shifting from free to premium?
That's a very good question, Chris. In fact, we were also concerned about it because whenever you add a new version, it appeals to more people. So obviously, people who had been sitting in the sideline and not buying your free product or the premium now suddenly feel that ebook is something that they can buy because they don't want to read a PDF or a print. Now, what we did in our experiment is we actually controlled for the market expansion effect. So we actually went back and looked at individual level data to see how individuals' preferences have changed as a result of adding this new version. And what we found was interesting because at the individual level, preferences have actually moved away from the free to the new premium or the existing premium. And that's how we were able to confirm the existence of this compromise and attraction effect. So we made it very clear, and we can clearly say that it is not due to market expansion. Of course, market expansion can also go on. That's why we have people buying ebook too. But we also see very clearly that people are moved from the free to the premium versions.
Interesting. So this is also a question that came in from the field here. Somebody was wondering about, shouldn't the free option that you mentioned in the study, shouldn't that become more appealing as you introduce a very high-priced premium option like the hardcover option in your study? The second effect that you showed, the customer might be thinking, hey, I'm really getting a great deal here. The free PDF when the hardcover costs $250. So do you think their intuition is correct?
Yeah.
Or what might they be? And I'm actually having the same thoughts. So what are we both missing here?
That's a good point, and I'm not denying that there could be a few people who might be thinking it that way. So they anchor on the $214 price, and then they suddenly see the free being really good compared to the $214. And certainly, it is possible, and this is something that we considered in our research. And but the net effect, even if you have a few people thinking that way, what our research really shows is the net effect is still something where majority of the people really feel that the existing premium now is much more appealing. And so people do move from the free to the existing premium or the new premium. So basically, that effect that you're talking about may exist, but what we are saying is that it's dominated by the other effect of the existing premiums becoming much more appealing.
Thank you for that. And maybe our last question, it's kind of a bigger picture question, which is from Tajalmu, and he asks about how relevant is the concept of framing, which I think should encapsulate both the compromise effect and the attraction effect in your study. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is all, a bigger, part of literature on framing. The way you frame it and the way you present these options really play a big role in how people make choices. In a freemium case, what we have essentially shown is that, there could be a lot of different types of effects that could be going on. But if you make your decisions correctly, appropriately, you may actually benefit by moving people from one option to the other. Of course, framing really plays a big role, and all the results from framing research needs to be taken into account in how you present the options to people when they come across the premium options.
Well, thank you very much, PK. We really appreciate the talk, and I'll mention this at the end as well. But they probably are out there already. If not, they'll be there by the end of the talk. There'll be sort of a managerial version of both of the presentations that you'll hear today, and then the complete article where you can, depending on how deep a dive you want to take into the material, you'll be able to find all of those at the Journal of Marketing website. And I'll mention that at the end and give you a way to connect with that. So again, thank you very much, PK.
Thank you, Chris.